coming back to society. And almost like the way the Vietnam vets were, how they had trouble coming back and people accepting them.
Mm.
Um, Whereas like they say the Iraq and Afghanistan vets, we had it easier. And I beg to differ. I think we had it just as hard simply because of the nature of the war. That a lot of like I, veterans that are from Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan sort of have that same mentality mindset of we have no idea why we were there. And so we have no sense of closure. And so because that closure isn't there, we have a hard time coming back from war without knowing that everything has been resolved. So we went over there for what reason then? Not only was, all of that for naught, a lot of our friends died for something that isn't even finished and it probably never will be. And so like a lot of the Iraq and Afghanistan vets call it the forever war because it's you can say it's an era or a timestamp on like when the actual war was done, but to be fair, if there's no closure to that war and there's no real victor, how can you say that that war is over with?
Well, I think you're on to something interesting, and let me pass something to you, and then I'm interested in your response. Because over the years, I talked with a lot of Vietnam vets, and overwhelmingly, the story is they come home either to hostility or apathy. And a
Mm-hmm.
number of them say, in some ways, that was as hard or harder than what we experienced in the world of war.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the response to that is following the Gulf War, but then we go into Iraq too and Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
that even if we disagree with the war policies, we make a distinction and we don't take that out on the combatants. And so you describe it in your own memoir. You're home on leave, people are thanking you for your service, they're patting you on your back. You probably still, hear thank you for your service. But what's interesting, my observation is that it doesn't make a difference in terms of a feeling of, I don't know what the right words are, bitterness, alienation, that all of the thank you for your service stuff um, actually doesn't make a difference in how veterans think about the war um, and live with it. And that's surprising because the Vietnam vets say, well, one of our big problems was we came home to indifference. But the Iraq and Afghanistan vets, they came home to thanks, so they were lucky. But then I talked to the Iraq and Afghanistan vets, and I'm thinking, no, in some ways, maybe it's just because it's closer in time. But I talked to Afghanistan and Iraq vets, and they seem more bitter, even, generally speaking, than the Vietnam vets. And what you're saying is it doesn't really have anything to do with thank you for your service. It has to do with just what happened in that war we came from. And one of the most fun, it's hard to get more fundamental than why are we here? And we can't even answer
Mm-hmm.
that question.
I
Um,
think I think a lot of it has to do with that the thank you for your service that we're getting is hollow. There's no true feeling behind it. And I think that goes to the kind of culture that we have now in terms of our society. Um, how everything is, it's instant gratification for the person saying it rather than the person that's receiving it. And so when you get these, I started doing something different. So anyone that says thank you for your service to me, I used to feel really like this horrible sense of guilt and a really horrible sense of like, well, I didn't really do anything, um, mentality to it. And I think throughout the years, I've kind of grown to the point where like I felt so hollow from the thank yous. And I realized that they weren't saying it for me, they were saying it for themselves. That I started replying back with thank you for your support. And so it throws it right back onto their shoulders and makes them really think about, why it is they said thank you in the first place. So, and honestly, and I get the weirdest mixed responses to that. Some people don't know how to respond after I said thank you for your support. And some people are like, well, my son was over there and he died, and so I just wanted to tell you thank you. And then that brings up a better conversation in terms of the thank you for your service. And then you get people who genuinely strike up a conversation after you say it. And there's those conversations I think I honestly get more out of in terms of healing and understanding and stuff like that. And I move way past the part of being, disconnected from society and disconnected from, Americans as a whole. And and so that's why I kept doing it, because I realized after that, couple of conversations after I said thank you for your support, that it made me feel better about not only while I was over there, but the fact that I came back alive. So it gave me more closure than I'd ever felt before. And it started to sort of heal a wound that I thought was going to just be a festering mess for the rest of my life. So it didn't end all be all band aid over it, but it did kind of like stitch it up one stitch at a time.